All of the same issues are here, but with even less stable image quality. Vasquez starts the shot as an amorphous blob before the AI starts to put a mouth on her cheek.
Oh my
then
god.
Realizes, no, that's not
so
it,
creepy.
and puts a cartoon butthole in, which would be a perfect fit for a little corncob pipe, by the way. And then it gives her Pennywise makeup to cap things.
Why are we doing this? Why? I'm sure it's very expensive is the other thing, right? I'm sure it costs a lot of money, a ton of computers, a lot of processing power, a ton of energy to achieve these results. We're just like, yeah, it's nightmarish. What are you doing? Why are you ruining everyone's childhood? This story is a story that I had no idea even took place, and it's already done with, and it's already out there. If you don't know, George Lucas and David Cameron, they have a really, really big thing about constantly re-releasing their content over and over and over, sometimes to the detriment of their own material. Steven Spielberg as well, actually. Spielberg is really big on this too, where they will re-release their films with updates. It's like, oh, this new one, it's not just going to be remastered. There's a couple changes. So, you know, we thought it was a little yikesy back in the day to have E.T. and have all these FBI agents run at kids holding guns. And then now that I think about it, I wish I hadn't done that. It's mine. I own it. 'Tis my art, so I'm allowed to go back in there and change their guns to walkie-talkies. So now in the new re-release, so I can get it back in theaters and have a whole bunch of people go back and to watch it, and I'll make tons of money and stuff like that. We did a couple slight little tweaks here and there, changed a couple things, and now it's back out there. And like, I don't think that you should not be allowed to do that at the end of the day. I mean, if you can do whatever you want to your own things, and you can re-release them if you want to, and people can also call you, you know, just devoid of any artistic, expression here, and just looking to profit handsomely off that kind of shit. But I didn't know this one takes place. So AI art is now being used to upgrade films into 4K. And it's already been done for True Lies as well as Terminator 2, where they're upgrading old movies and movies that were not filmed with modern cameras. They were filmed, again, with film cameras. But if anyone doesn't know this, film cameras, even back in the day, were taking video in very, very high, what would be considered high resolution, right? Even though we weren't measuring it in the same, like we weren't in the industry saying, this is 8K, we're filming this in 8K on this Panasonic, right? But the frame in which it's filmed, when you stretch that picture into a big screen, it still looks gorgeous. It still looks beautiful. Even though you're stretching it to meet the demands of a 4K resolution or an 8K resolution television, it's still going to look beautiful. But then along comes a whole bunch of industry people thinking, well, why don't we use AI to make it even nicer, to dress it up?
This channel isn't really known for movie content. Well, not content people like, anyway. But I wanted to talk about the use of AI in film restorations, because we don't get much time to discuss these things in advance. AI has potential to do a lot of great things, but also a lot of harm, and it's moving so fast that we've been discovering what and who it's going to break in real time as it's happening. James Cameron recently gave us a shot across the bow for another application of AI: Hollywood film remasters. Cameron was already known for producing one of the most disappointing 4Ks in the history of the format with Terminator 2, a hyper-processed mess with enough grain reduction to turn characters into cartoons, and so much teal that the original colors have been terminated from this timeline.
Terminated fucker.
His new 4Ks take the revisionism to a new level by incorporating Park Road's AI upscaling. Peter Jackson developed this tech to make low-quality war footage look more like modern video for the sake of better realism. It was used.
And don't get me wrong, it's wild to take an old black and white photo or even an old black and white film reel and then be able to enhance it in such a way that it might actually make you feel more present in that moment. That concept I'm not against, and the very idea of trying to be like, hey, by the way, this will make you feel a lot more immersed in what it was actually like during World War II in this footage that you might just look at it normally it's just like really small and grainy and hard to make out what's taking place. Well, now we have the ability to show you far more detail. But at what point are we crossing over to, but this never happened? As in, like, that soldier's fingers, for example, weren't like this, or that gloss and shine on the blade. We're starting to go into a fictionalized version. If you just push this too much, right, to an extreme.
Just in the Beatles documentary Get Back for the same reason. You could argue that it's impressive that the AI cleans up such old footage this well. You could also argue that it looks like creepy, uncanny digital shit. Enhancing found archival footage is one thing, but some people would argue that this process is antithetical to what 4K movie restorations are about. My source on that is me. Me people would argue that. The best 4K releases tend to follow a pretty simple template. Clean and scan the negative, repair any obvious signs of damage, and restore the colors to match the original grading, with as little meddling beyond that as possible. The process shouldn't be about modernizing the style or forcing the film to look like digital video. 35mm film was capable of incredible picture quality, and 4K is the first home format capable of delivering most of that detail. That should be good.
Again, that's all you need to know. You don't need to take a film studies course. Don't need to know a lot of it. Just need to know that if you want someone who's telling you, hey, by the way, my company does film restoration, and we're going to be able to put out 4K versions of old films, because all you need is access to the negative, essentially. And that process, while it is very long and tedious and does take a long time to accomplish properly, that's all you need to do. There doesn't need to be other stuff, because at the end of the day, sure, I want it to be in the original cinematic quality that we weren't able to see in our homes. We used to have those 480p, they weren't even P, they were 480i, like, you know, cubed televisions where they'd have to squish the format and then get it to there. So yeah, it's nice that we now have the ability to watch it and restore it to that. You don't need to add AI into the mix just to be like, and then what if we upgraded the hair flow? What do you mean? The way the hair moves. What if we made it like shinier? That could be done, you know, just like it's same movie, but then everyone's hair kind of just, it looks like it's modern and shiny.
Good enough. A well-done 4K is like having a pristine copy of the original negative to watch in your own home, with the full data from that celluloid, grain and detail alike, digitally preserved forever. And that's the problem with deep learning algorithms. They can't preserve details. They make their best guess about what an object is supposed to be, then pull new details out of their digital assholes and smear them across the screen. This is a bit technical, I know, but try to keep up. True Lies is the best demonstration of why this remastering approach was a horrendously bad idea.
I didn't even know this happened. Because I guess I don't like buy, I guess, Blu-rays, or I don't buy a lot of physical media anymore, or I like, you know, I wasn't looking out for when are the latest remasters coming out for films like Aliens or True Lies, but I didn't know that they were using AI technology, and they've already done it. The release is released. You can buy the 4K re-release master to try and enhance the original film, but look at what it's doing. There's so many unusual things, like the oversaturation on the wrinkles, for example, and the pronouncement of it, which are clearly being done by an algorithm which is computating where every single different change and flex happens in its skin, and then how to pixel by pixel respond to that as it upgrades the actual resolution of the film.
Faces regularly become host to a menagerie of parasites, burn scars, and porcelain cracks. Lines are over-sharpened to the point of making Arnie look like crinkled leather, and Tom Arnold, a spectacle to behold in his prime, looks to be in the early stages of Emperor Palpatineism. The AI inserts these details because it doesn't have a great grasp on human skin yet. Keyword yet. Not only does this fake detail suck, it has no temporal stability. Faces phase between AI over-sharpening and soft blurriness from one second to the next. Features like eyelids bizarrely cut through out-of-focus shots with razor clarity. It seems the algorithm was able to recognize that something was a face and drew googly eyes onto it regardless of whether it made sense relative to the rest of the frame. Hair always looks like a video game render, some kind of digital wig applied to the actors' heads, and these synthetic details also remain uncannily sharp when the actor is otherwise blurred by motion. The AI tries its best with distant faces, but always renders them as if in the midst of possession by a squishy demon. Any unusual lighting conditions or obstructions confuse the results. An eyeball briefly melts like a Salvador Dali clock, or warps along with the edges of smoke lines. It's hard to shake the feeling that pupils are going wrong in several ways at once. And of course, you get a few fucked up hands.
And it all looks so shiny. Like, why is everyone so shiny? Hey, come on, that was the 90s. You know, we were all extra glossy back then. I don't know why. I can't remember. This is truth to me, all right? This is reality. This is what I know the world to be now.
AI was supposedly going to deliver next-generation grain removal, able to reduce noise without removing detail, but it seems to accomplish the reverse. Jamie Lee Curtis's face is hyper-smoothed, but the grain is still there, as if the algorithm targeted her skin itself. Lines appear too deep because of the over-sharpening, which is exaggerated even more by how smooth the rest of the face is in comparison, giving the actress a borderline ghoulish appearance. The small facial nuances of performances are plastered over by the AI's bullshit, turning even the most basic emotions weird. What used to be human expressions of affection have become cold mechanical simulations, wrought from the jaws of rubber-skinned apparitions masquerading in the places of ones once called Curtis and Governator. The over-sharpening produces so many halos that even the simplest shots look green-screened, undermining a lot of the very real, very expensive stunts that were done in-camera. There are also odd color banding issues. A few shots are aliased to the point of looking like they were pulled from a laserdisc. There's not much information about the sources used for this remaster, so it's hard to say what's going wrong here. And it's hard to compare against past releases because the film never came to Blu-ray, adding insult to injury that this is the only modern version fans will get. Now, I'm no expert. I haven't seen all movies, but I'd feel safe calling this one of the worst film restorations ever done, because I've never laughed out loud at a fucking remaster before. This is almost worthy of a bad movie night with friends, where you drink every time the AI fucks something up. It starts looking like shit from literally the first moment a human being is on screen. As reviled as Terminator 2's 4K is, it's by far the better looking disc by virtue of having some good looking shots. True Lies looks like the entirety of the film was generated frame by frame in DALL-E. Aliens is the release I was really excited for, and it barely fares any better. All of the same issues are here, but with even less stable image quality. Vasquez starts the shot as an amorphous blob before the AI starts to put a mouth on her cheek.
Oh my god.
Then realizes, no, that's not
so
it,
creepy.
and puts a cartoon butthole in, which would be a perfect fit for a little corncob pipe, by the way. And then it gives her Pennywise makeup to cap things.
Why are we doing this? Why? I'm sure it's very expensive is the other thing, right? I'm sure it costs a lot of fucking money, a ton of computers, a lot of processing power, a fuck ton of energy to achieve these results. We're just like, yeah, it's nightmarish. What are you doing? Why are you ruining everyone's childhood?
Things off. Nailed it.
Because we can.
Cherry-picked.
I know, it's just such an example of because we can. Because we can.
Faces melt and warp like this throughout the entire movie, and even when the AI isn't completely fucking something up, it still looks off. Pores get unsharp masked into bullet holes. Pixels that shouldn't connect are joined together to form waxy fractal-like patterns, similar to what you get when using smoothing filters on old video games. It took years of advancement and superpowered tensor cores for Park Road to achieve XBRZ technology. It again results in extremely unflattering close-ups, making Sigourney Weaver look a decade older than before. The noise reduction occasionally goes haywire and seems to mistake grain for clothing or skin detail, resulting in pixels frozen in place for the duration of a scene. Haloing is a major issue in this release as well, with even Ripley holding a cat looking like some kind of composite effect. And the overly fluid, dreamlike renderings continue to make practical scenes look like CGI. The Blu-ray release of Aliens was not exactly a prize itself, having apparently undergone some process at Lowry involving heavy grain removal, sharp...
Not our going to release. Have released. These are already out. Again, until I saw this like video, yes, I pre-watched this. This is the reason why I saw it and wanted to share it with all of you because it was like, holy shit, I didn't even know this. I didn't know that they were already using AI tech to do 4K remasters of old 90s films, and that like they're not using this technology in a way that I think is any way beneficial to the art itself. If anything, it is non-stop, uncanny valley, strange, weird. Like once he said it, I can't stop seeing the hair stuff where it just makes all the hair look as if it is digitally rendered and artificial and moving. And I know some people would see what is happening on the right side of the screen right now, and when they see it, they're like, I don't get it. It looks nice. It looks shinier. Glossier even, as if there's like a thin layer of like Vaseline applied to everybody. And it's like, okay, well, like if that's what you want, I can't take that away from you. If you want to see every single one of your old films and just open up a giant thing of Vaseline and then just spread it on the television, probably cheaper than doing it this way, but whatever you want, however you want to get, fine, you can have that. It's not personally for me, but I don't want people trying to pass this off as revolutionary. When honestly, in all parts, like, are we really gaining a ton from removing a lot of the actual aspects of being human and aging and having skin that isn't uniform, clear, and perfect in some ways, but yet because the AI didn't want to pick it up here, for example, this looks natural. This all looks as if you had applied a brush filter to make it all smooth out, and look at how nice and smooth in 4K it is. People are both young and old simultaneously. You can look as if you're 10 years younger in this film, but also look as if you're 20 years older. It depends on the shot, the lighting, and how the AI is going to pick up and change every single pixel, as it is, again, doing its best to approximate what it thinks you want. If you're like, okay, so my new revolutionary 4K technology is basically going to upgrade all these old movies. It's going to change the way people's skin looks, and it's like, it's doing something for sure. I can see the effects.
And fake grain reinsertion afterward, along with the colors getting a major teal push. But despite that mangling, the image holds up and is more enjoyable because you're not constantly tumbling down the uncanny valley like fucking Homer Simpson in the Springfield Gorge. Some may write this off as nitpicking, but there's no such thing when it comes to 4K, a format premised on the display of every last minute detail. I didn't seek out faults frame by frame. I paused the movies only when something was actively drawing my attention, which was at least once every few minutes, enough that I ran out of scrap paper watching these. Professional reviewers seem predisposed to give releases like this good marks simply because the level of detail has increased, but it shouldn't count when that detail is nonsensical garbage. Some major outlets sidestep talking about the AI altogether. Why? If you're already deep diving into and offering opinions on the tech behind movie releases, why draw an arbitrary line at this tech specifically? If AI is being considered for future restorations, isn't right now the most important time to judge its performance? I think the assessment of any reasonable person would be that this upscaling was simply not good enough for a major commercial release yet, possibly the final home format release at that. So why use it? Why wasn't a standard 4K scan and cleanup good enough, given how well that served other releases? Barring some kind of late revelation proving otherwise, it seems the answer is that they didn't even bother to do a new scan in the first place. Internet forums have...
Personally, I like film fuzziness. Like, again, I don't want to sound like this really old man who's like, well, actually, in my day, we had things like film grain. But, like, when I watch an older movie, I usually watch an older movie, and I situate myself in also just, like, the time frame. Like, this movie came out in the 1970s, and so for the 1970s, this was a film, and this is how poignant it was for that era. If you watch, say, like, Fargo today, it doesn't really have much of a disturbing effect on you. It's not like the kind of movie that you'd watch and, like... But then you hear stories of how when Fargo came out, people were literally like vomiting and leaving the theater and they couldn't believe the things that they were seeing. You watch it now and you see like way worse stuff on fucking any social media any single day. So it's kind of like, you know, we kind of put how extreme the original Fargo was on mute. But like when you watch it, I do try and situate myself as to why this film was so, you know, astonishing for its time and why it actually made all these waves and why all these film festivals were talking about it and why so many people found it to be so, and how the you know, the Coen brothers actually fooled a bunch of people by pretending that it was a real story. But anyways, like I don't mind someone upgrading a movie because, again, these films were filmed with video cameras that had higher resolution than the televisions that we then got conversions to. So you get an old VHS, it's been downgraded to 480i, all that kind of stuff, you know? I have an idea. We should use AI to remaster the US Constitution. Do it. Do it. Go right now. Make it better.
Melted down bickering over this, but there's been some confirmation that Aliens used the finished 2K master from 2010. Just looking at the disc itself backs that up. Underneath the AI-generated horror show, the 4K is basically the old Blu-ray again. I realize not everyone watching is fully nerded up on the details of 4K, and a few people will probably end up seeing this in HDR, so I'll explain what these spiromographs mean. SDR content had a peak brightness of 100 nits, which is basically nothing in terms of the light you see on a daily basis. The high dynamic range of 4K enables films to be mastered for 10,000 nits of peak brightness, although most stop at just 1,000. When tastefully handled, the wider range greatly increases the contrast and realism of the image, and often restores highlight details that were clipped in SDR transfers.
You're watching this at most in 1080p, by the way, because Twitch maxes out at 1080p, so does YouTube for streaming, so you're not watching this in 4K, even if you selected 4K, so you might not be able to see the things that he's talking about necessarily.
Aliens has a soft cap of 200 nits according to Resolve scopes. In other words, SDR+, which means that a thermonuclear explosion ends up being less bright than the Ghostbusters lobby. Not every film needs HDR cranked up to max levels, and some filmmakers choose not to use it, revered cinematographer Roger Deakins being among them. But after seeing HDR fully utilized in the first Alien, as well as the films that inspired its visuals like 2001: A Space Odyssey, the complete lack of it here feels less like an artistic choice and more that they just took the SDR transfer and turned a knob. The fake DR also creates blown out, unnatural highlights on skin and other surfaces. The higher white level still improves the image, but you could probably get better results boosting the Blu-ray yourself in a single afternoon. It's borderline false advertising to list HDR as a feature on the box. Wide color spectrum is another selling point of 4K that doesn't really apply here. Of the colors the human eye can see, Blu-ray's 709 standard covered roughly 35%. 4K uses 2020, which covers about 75%. This allows new film scans to deliver color that could never be seen before, and most negatives have plenty to offer. Vertigo, a film from 1958, is absolutely loaded with previously out-of-gamut color. Suspiria has some shots where more color exists outside of the old 709 space than within it. Aliens is mostly restrained to the 709 color space.
Mostly.
Color
Merci.
sometimes seeps outside of that standard, mostly blues and mostly on effect shots, but not to the extent I've seen when scanning through other 4Ks. Ghostbusters, a fairly undersaturated movie shot on the same stock, has much more wide gamut color than this. It all suggests they fed the Blu-ray to the AI and didn't really check what it ended up shitting out. The only legitimate upgrade here is that the metallic teal grading has been reined in, but the better color is more than offset by everything else. It's extremely disappointing after the stunning
I've got the Amazon.com True Lies Ultimate Collection. I don't see anything about AI in either the description or on the box or on the back. The back just has all the things you'd expect, right? This is now in 4K, Ultra HD. We've worked with the 4K digital intermediate using 4K scans of the original camera. This has been confirmed by Lightstorm. The footage has not been optimized. It's using, oh no, it says proprietary deep learning algorithms. Park Road's proprietary deep learning algorithms. So yeah, it does mention that, I guess, in the, well, sorry, that's the review, not the box. It's not on the box. Philip Schwartz, thanks for the $2. I'm glad we can still recognize the use of AI. Well, you're witnessing it. This is the future.
4K release of Alien, which got just the kind of straightforward treatment I was glorifying earlier. The film was allowed to be filmed.
Oh yeah, and like I said, I didn't even know this happened. I didn't know that not only were they thinking of doing it, it makes perfect sense. I can totally understand why they would think this can apply to be able to, again, make way more money by selling people the idea that there's these, like, you know, very incredible high definition restorations that are taking place. But I didn't know that not only has it already been implemented and already been used, it's already been used, implemented, and the movies have been released.
The grain doesn't hurt anything. Faces don't mutate when more than 5 feet from the camera. The HDR is flashy but well judged, blasting up to 1000 nits when appropriate. It makes it hard not to wonder what Aliens might have looked like had they just done a normal restoration. True Lies is mostly the same story, a 200 nit cap for the entire duration. The snow scenes in particular are badly blown out. Again, I'm an ignorant YouTuber, not a professional colorist, but I have to imagine a real HDR grade would have recovered more highlight detail than this. And like Aliens, there's just a small amount of wide gamut color and only a handful of shots. Supposedly this one was scanned in 4K but was the first remaster of the batch, which if true makes the AI even more impressively terrible that it did this to a native 4K image. According to the same source, Titanic and the Abyss came last, also using 4K scans, and they mostly look okay.
Mostly.
The Abyss even bucks the HDR trend and makes frequent use of the headroom above 200 nits. The AI is still noticeable in these, and you can see it fading in and out just like the others, but it's not offensive. The worst I can say about these two is that close-ups have a hyper-real quality to them, with so much sharpening that they don't look like normal faces anymore. Ed Harris looks like a pile of sandpaper come to life. It's unnecessary and off-putting, and even distracting in some of the most pivotal scenes, but you can mostly ignore those shots and still enjoy the movies.
Merci.
James Cameron hyped these releases up in interviews, claiming every pixel of every frame had been scrutinized.
Oh my god.
He acknowledged the importance of getting a 4K release right, as this may be the last format we
like
get,
an algorithm.
especially in a streaming-only world, where services will only host the new 4K transfers and discard older ones. These could be the versions we end up looking at for a very, very long time. Despite being fully aware of the stakes when preparing his filmography for posterity, Cameron still pressed the "just fuck my shit up" button, binding this early beta technology to his films for all time.
Pretty darn good.
It is at least in the same ballpark as George Lucas fusing 90s CGI into Star Wars. If it sounds like I'm vilifying Cameron too much, just keep in mind that I chose to do this video because I love his work. He's a genius who has made some of the most successful movies in history, which is why it matters when he makes terrible decisions about them. At least in the case of Aliens, there's a problematic film stock to blame.
Kodak was in transition. They hadn't worked out their T-grain emulsion, so it turned out to be grainier than I would have wanted.
Cameron would have gone to town with AI noise reduction no matter what, and maybe they figured a new scan would just add more grain to remove. The Blu-ray also had digital fixes that would have to be redone with a new scan, but working from an already heavily manipulated 2K master clearly did the AI no favors. Some of the weird anomalies in this version seem to be rooted in the AI not understanding damage or distortion from that master. Other films claimed to have used the same Eastman stock have mostly turned out alright on 4K. Seeing the same actress on the same film in Ghostbusters makes for a clear comparison. It's grainy as hell, but pleasant to watch and takes full advantage of the 4K format. If this is what a straight Aliens restoration would have looked like, I'd take it over the drippy Picasso edition. Another possibility is that Cameron didn't really give a shit. He made it very clear that these transfers were a burden he didn't have time for, and maybe AI was just the fastest and easiest way to get from point A to point B. Whatever the reason was, there's arguably another set of films in that Star Wars zone now, where the burden of a high-quality restoration falls to fans and whatever surviving reels they can find. If there's a silver line...
So that's the part of this all that does piss me off, is that when the new versions, the Star Wars Ultimate Editions, came out of the original trilogy, they stopped releasing the original Star Wars. So if you weren't someone who really just thought that it was necessary to watch Star Wars with these added scenes put in there, couple of CG sequences that weren't in there, extended bar dance scene, you know, meeting Jabba the Hutt in CG, and then all that kind of stuff. Like, if you didn't think that was necessary for your experience and you just wanted to watch the originals, all of a sudden, unless you had a copy of the VHS tapes, you're kind of fucked. Do you want a higher quality version of the originals as they actually just, you know, again, re-release the original prints? Again, you're going to be kind of fucked, because the ultimate version of that movie now, considered by, you know, George Lucas until Disney bought it, is considered to be that version. And so because that's the version that he thinks is the version that everyone should see, that's what they do. And that's the part of it that's really sad.
The original negatives are probably still available for another studio to take a crack at them, if someone darted and gagged Cameron first.
What's up, Dark Native? Good to see you.
The point of this video is not AI bad. There have been deep learning upscales that have turned out better than this. If AI had been used in a more targeted way, like fixing these horrendous stunt double face swaps, that would have been fine. It could even help with the most manual of manual restorations.
And the film prints, some have better color, some seem to have more detail. That piece of information probably exists on another print. And when you combine the data from, in this case, 4 other prints, that's the new level of detail that we're talking about. In order for that to work, those pieces of film have to be precisely aligned. At the time that I was developing this, there was no software tool that could do this.
If AI could automate these tasks, it could empower fans to accomplish things never before possible with degraded prints. The point is that it has to be...
I just want access to both, though, because there is just something charming about the process that went into making the original 1970s Star Wars, where, yeah, some of the effects, like, they literally were inventing new techniques as they went on. I don't know if everyone knows this, but the actual spaceships that you see, and the reason why people in movie theaters at that time were just like, holy fuck, what am I seeing, is because they invented new technology in how that would actually look by having the camera, for a change, move independent of the objects themselves, aka the little models that they were making of all these spaceships. What if, instead of like we normally do, hold spaceships on a string and we just move it in front of the camera like this and dangle it, and then it looks like it's flying through space, and we just put a black background and boom, there we have it. This is space travel. What if we had the actual cameras themselves move independently of this, and then as the camera moves and pans out, if we have a background that we can change in and out, it'll look like the object itself, the spaceship, is flying at the camera, and we have to invent something new to do that. And while now you're going to do it exclusively through CGI, which, fair enough, that's just the way the world works, people use the cheaper technology, it's still kind of darling to have practical effects where people have to kind of like think in their own head, how can I manifest an idea that I have in my brain so it can visually display on there? I have to create a monster from scratch. I'm going to actually build one. We're going to make a monster, and it's going to be real, and it's going to be sitting beside the person, so that this actor isn't just talking to a green little golf ball or a tennis ball that's just there. And it's like, pretend that that's like a really scary monster. And like, oh my god, ah. But then in practical effects, they'd have to actually stare at the monster itself. Or in this case, where they actually had to paint frame by frame the bottom of this in order to make it look as if there was nothing underneath, right? Instead, this obviously practical effects was most likely with wheels or on a cart or something as it's moving along. Well, we had to actually go frame by frame, go back there and paint to make it look like sand, and it looks bad. It doesn't look great. When you look at the old grainy version of this shot, yeah, it doesn't look nice, but if you go back in there and then you use a whole bunch of special effects and modern CG, we can actually make it look flawless, as if this was the technology that existed back then. So I'm not saying you can't have that. Fine, go forth, have the special editions, go do all that stuff. But I also want to have the charming, what was the original art that was made? Like, not the, like, again, it's one of those things where, like, if you take like a painting every couple of years, are you allowed to keep just adding to the painting? You're totally allowed to. Can I just have a photo of the first one as you go down that journey and paint 10,000 new things on top of the same painting every single year to add new details and stuff? I'm not saying that it's not looking great. It's your work. You own it. I just wanted to see what the original one also looked like, you know?
Be used carefully, and the main problem with these remasters is that it was not. And it's up to you, the customer, to decide whether or not that matters. If the disc sells either way, then the Park Road treatment gets normalized, and maybe other studios will decide to take this cheaper and faster route. There's a debate to have here.
But even in 1080p, there's something just so uncanny and creepy about everyone's faces now. they all look slightly digital, because I guess they are. They've all had pixels changed in and out to approximate what they think is the best upscaled version of this original footage.
Because obviously Terminator 2's 4K sucking didn't stop this from happening. But buying these releases certainly isn't going to help. The Terminator especially is on a precarious edge, being the last major Cameron movie still on Blu-ray. The only slim chance it doesn't end up as another AI shit show is if people make enough noise about these releases. So if you've had your eye on one of these 4Ks, consider avoiding them, because they're trash. I bought them for this video, sure, but specifically so I could tell you not to, so you see, it makes perfect sense. Aliens in particular is a fraud. It's not real 4K, not real HDR, not really wide color. If you have the Blu-ray, you can get better results dropping it into gigapixel. We have Aliens 4K at home. With businesses conspiring to force physical media into an early grave, we're on the cusp of adorably losing ownership and control of our history. The decisions we make right now in the
that's also like a bigger thing, and that's not just for movies, it's for video games. That's where you're seeing this happen already, where everything is on the cloud now, right? And no one wants to be selling physical media, and I get it, it's wasteful, it'd be better if we didn't have to do that, fine. But you also just take games off the store, games that I bought. Like, if all of a sudden I can't download it again because my hard drive is corrupted, or I buy a new PS5 or something like that, I can't download that game again. It's like, no, we no longer offer that game on the store anymore. So, good luck. Yeah, good luck finding it. Hopefully some of you enjoyed PT before it got removed permanently, and the only way to ever play that game now is to actually buy an old PS4 that has it already pre-installed.
Practices we choose to accept could matter a lot for the future of our culture, dictating what we can watch and how we watch it. I think it's fair to say that AI is now another factor in that mix. So look Vasquez right in the face, butthole.
Yeah, same thing with music, same thing with movies. Like, if these corporations have the ability to decide what anyone has access to forever, like forever, permanently, as in like, hey, by the way, no one in their right minds even downloads music anymore. It's so tedious. We all just go on Spotify because it's already there. I don't have to think about it. Boom, Spotify, search my songs. They suddenly take down an entire artist's catalog, or that artist removes their catalog, and there's no other way to get it, and that's the only way that we absorb music. Well, that's the danger, again, behind monopolies controlling everything.
And decide for yourself if this is the future you want to support.
It is not. But that, again, very interesting video. I thought it was great. It opened my eyes. I'll share the... I don't know anything else about Norel, so if Norel also happens to be some kind of like, closet neo-Nazi, then I didn't know that. I withdraw my support, and that video was absolute shit, and don't support them. But they could also just be awesome. I thought that it was a good video.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We first want to give a shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. This program is produced thanks to the generous support of our Patreon supporters: Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbar Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bomey, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Travis McClinton, and Words Greenwood, as well as every other person you see on the screen right now. This show would not be possible without them. And if you want to join these wonderful people who make this entire program possible, simply go to patreon.com/theserfs and you can unlock uncensored and bonus episodes and, help us exist.